policeman who was assigned to the matter was just saying, well, like his mother said, his lovers and everything okay, and the baby here, and but we just know something went wrong because the matter was to call in March. Right, so we know something had happened. That's we couldn't prove anything. Then they refer me to the anti-kidnapping squad. When you call to ask like if they hear anything, well, ma'am, why you calling the station? If we hear something, we will call you. And you know, they talk in a kind of way like she's nobody, you understand? So that was it. I keep fighting to see the little girl. During all that, I had a miscarriage. I keep putting ad on the newspaper, I like to see the little child. I just know Grandy, I didn't know where. We went in the ID card office, we saw an address, Oraput Road. We keep taking out summons in the court for the Oraput Road. When the police do go to the house was abandoned, which means they had moved out of the house. It was a very old house, they moved out. And the mother's sister was living to the back in her room, and she said she's a police, and that if she see Joel, now she make her boys hold it. And madam, you don't know what you're in.
What was it like as a mother after 13 years, you know, learning about this incident with Andrea Barrett and then finding out full circle that Joel Balcon was one of the main suspects in this murder, and now you also had an experience with him and your daughter. What was that like for you?
When we found out he was arrested, somebody called and showed us a film where they locked down Geranta Gardens and Yellow Crescent, where they live, and asking me, is not up there Joel mother living? I said, well, yes. They said, well, Joel now get arrested, they search the mother house, whatever. And I said, arrested for what? Who can eat thief? What you do? They said, no, for the Andrea who missing. Because they didn't find her yet. They find her the Thursday and they find the bones the Friday, the next day. And I started to feel a little like we're getting somewhere after the 13 years.
So basically, Terry went missing without a trace. You never found
nothing.
A bag, clothes, anything belonging?
Nothing. But his mother always knew. She knew what her son was doing. She knew what that boy was doing. She knew. She took him out in October. She knew. Because plenty girls he have rape charges for, plenty. When they hold him, when he came from Tobago, it was plenty charges, about maybe 6 or 7. He was hiding in Tobago and then he come back here and as he come off the plane, they arrest him.
And there was also a time where he held Terry and beat her.
Yes.
And broke her hands. And
they report that in San Grande station. He beat her on her hands and raped her. Well, I don't know if his friends raped her too. And they drop her off. They tell her she's lucky she's alive and it's only because of the child. And he dropped her off on the bus route, by the bus route in Sawa. And I just couldn't cope with it. I asked my bigger son, my firstborn, to go with her, he and his wife, to go with her at the San Grande station. She went, the report was lodged in the book. She went to the San Grande hospital, and nothing came out of it. Nothing came out of it, nothing. That report is in the book there, we know it is there. Nothing came out of it. So he could just do what he wants and get away all the time.
There was a scar that was mentioned. I understand.
On his back?
yeah. By the back of his neck.
And he said that to him to save her sister.
Because a woman who was raped said that
Yeah, she did that to him because when she broke the bottle, she jumped on his back. Remember, she was young. She was a teenager, she was young. And she seen the sister like half dead on the road. She broke the bottle and jumped on his back because a bottle he damaged my daughter with. So she broke a bottle and jumped on his back and did that to him. He had surgery also.
If you had something, or if there's something you wanted to tell the Balcon family now, that you were not able to tell them or haven't had a proper conversation with them, what would you tell them now? 13 or years later, your daughter is missing, presumed perhaps dead, as you said, you think it's in her bones, and then there's all these other women with all these other charges coming down from Balkan. What do you want to tell his family, his parents?
I don't have anything bad to say to his father. He's a very nice man. But his mother, she have to say her prayers and ask for forgiveness because she know all what her son was doing. I'm 100% sure of that. She know what her son was doing.
What message do you have for people?
And right now, okay.
We know that Terry has been missing. Not a day would go by when he wouldn't miss your daughter. Tell us.
Because every day we used to study her for her birthday, Christmas.
How you go by? Well, I mean, you have 9 other children, but it's still a gap.
Really, really hard. It was really hard. She used to mind, well, our son named Jamal, he's 19. And when he born, she and Terry used to really like watch him from another because you know had things to do. And when she went missing, he missed her a lot. He used to like take it on. And we always study her at all times. At one time, like I actually run broke, paying private investigator, hiring cargo in Grandy, hiring cargo in Grandy. When you hire a car to go Grandy, it's for $500. Because they're driving, they don't know where they're going. We're searching here, searching here, searching here, searching here. We don't know where we're going. We're searching. Can't find him. When he saw us by the court, when he got charged, when he came from Tobago and he got charged for this series of rape, he started they started getting a bit, they don't know what I was talking to the policewoman, and then the mother come and tell me how she agreed to me to see Jada and thing, and how the girls, some girls set up his son and they would allow me to see Jada if I would just stop harassing Joel. The guy that died named Solo, he innocent. Because since Joel no Terry going Mount Up, Solo used to be with them on the Maxi, the candy shop Maxi. When they're friends so long, that's him maybe probably never get charges for rape and things like that, but they're his friends and then they're in things together. He all that innocent.
So they went to school together?
Solo and Balkan used to be on a Maxi.
Right.
The Maxi was candy shop. And they used to go by the Mount Hope Junior Secondary School. That's the school Terry used to go. They're friends from long. They're in this thing way back then. They're friends from long.
Like Solo?
Yes, yeah. He's not no innocent as just saying and all of that. How he get charged for weed and he just was maybe never raped nobody to say, well, get charged for a rape charge and whatever. But he and Fabo was very good. They did things together. They did things together. Maybe he was trying to live a family life and stop doing what he used to do, you know, but it wasn't a thing.
In the interest of fairness, Unspun reached out to the father of Joel Balkan over the last month, and he had initially agreed to speak with us about his son. But late last week, he told us that the time was not right, and he would contact us when he was ready to speak. Well, what's the deal with those who contemplate murdering someone, and why do they act the way they do? Questions we'll answer after the break with Akash Samaru.
Imagine a football field where you are the star. Here's the setup. Purchase a 5-litre Stag keg, a 6-pack, or a case of Stag brew and... goal!
Win big. Stag limited edition football shirts, Stag authentic footballs, and the big league prize of an all-inclusive Stag football viewing live for 10 persons at a special venue loaded with food, beers, and Stag gear. Get in on the game. Visit Facebook and Instagram for more details. Stag, a man's bear.
Come to Homeland Marketing and discover our wonderful wrought iron designs, gates, tracks and guides, wheels, zinc hollow section, Makita tools and primer. Number 44 Montrose Main Road, Chaguanas. 3 buildings after the Chaguanas Medical Center heading east. Homeland Marketing, beautifying homes.
Stop putting the blame on someone else when we all know that you're doing this to get your daughter back because you need her money. Because we're not going to sell our shares. We're not going to sell our shares.
Teresa, Saturdays at 7:30 p.m. Only on CNC3.
Welcome back to Unspun. Now that we have a deeper insight into Joel Balcon, we can delve into the mind of this repeat offender to maybe try to understand his motives. Senior reporter Joshua Simongal spoke with Mr. Ryan Cave, a former classmate of Mr. Balcon, who had some very interesting things to say about their time together at Northeastern College in Sangre Grande. Let's listen in.
I think of fellow schoolmate, fellow classmate, you know. I didn't go to school with a monster, you know. There was no horns, there was no pitchfork, there was nothing sinister about the individual then. The earliest memories, I mean, normal young boy activity, you know. He was quiet for all intents and purposes, shy in the early days, you know. We would share a couple words. He would always be soft-spoken, not much to say. He often seemed lost and in a daze, but you know, you would associate that with the newness of the environment, the newness of meeting people. He liked a good prank, a good joke, like everybody else. I mean, like everybody else, you would start to seek, you know, a social community at that age. 16, 17 years old, you're not sure about yourself, so you start to gravitate towards people who you think you could idolize. So it was always the older guys in the school, you know. So the cigarettes, the ducking class, you know, these were things of the norm back then. I started to see the transformation in terms of real deviant behavior after we left high school, you know. He started hanging out on the blocks, out all hours of the night, hanging out with some not so reputable characters, if you want to put it that way, you know. The news reports started coming in. So I would say at that point it really started to turn for the worse. I think he was reaching out for help. He would have been reprimanded several times in school and out of school. And what stood out about him to me is that there was always remorse. I always saw remorse in him. It didn't in any way deter him from doing what he was doing before, but you always felt a sense of remorse in him. He seemed very much normal, you know. You would have a conversation with him on the road. You would say, Joel, boy, I'm hearing this about you, I'm hearing that about you, and he would hang down his head, almost in shame about it, you know. So it's difficult to really bridge the gap, so to speak, in between the person you knew and the allegations now, you know. That whole situation was a lot of mixed emotions, you know. There was shock, there was sadness, there was anger. I mean, situations like these don't happen overnight, you know. I think it was a long time in the making, and as you would have said before, yes, there would have been some sense in him of, you know, maybe reaching out or trying to get help, but it just wasn't available from the earliest days. I'm talking about from high school all the way up. It just wasn't available, you know. Men have this macho way about them in terms of not wanting to seek help and ashamed to seek help. But I think those in a position to recognize and intervene didn't at the appropriate time, you know. I think early detection and intervention is key. And I'm talking from the earliest stages, parenting, school, policing, the legal system. All these institutions came together and failed in a miserable way, resulting in this situation, you know. Detection could have happened earlier, I believe. We could have intervened at some level. Psychological help, maybe even as much as just separation from mainstream society until we could at least get to the root cause of it and deal with it. None of that happened. I think we are quick to judge and demonize people when something happens without actually considering that nobody is born with these tendencies. You know, something happens along the line that would create this type of deviant behavior, you know, and until we get to the root cause of that, it's likely to happen again and again. Joel wasn't the first, and he will by no means be the last. He's gone, but the system that incubated this behavior continues. And until we start to focus on that, the system really won't change. This is something I did share with him long after we left school. Maybe not so eloquently put, but I would tell him to get help. Don't be ashamed to reach out to somebody to get help. There is nothing wrong in recognizing that you're not okay and seeking some sort of assistance psychologically to not go down that path. You know, there is nothing normal about this type of behavior. There is nothing normal about feeling this way about another human being and committing these acts. And if it is that you do find yourself going down that road, you need to seek help. Too many young men idolizing certain types of behavior, you know, and we putting it on a pedestal as though it's okay, it's macho, it's right. You know, when it's not. It's not. And in every small step we take in the wrong direction, it have a lot of catastrophic effects down the road. You know, the younger ones look to the older ones for guidance, and when they see this type of behavior, they will follow. Maybe not all, but quite a few of them will follow in that direction. And I can't see it having any positive outcome, as we have seen.
Definitely an interesting perspective. Still to come, Akash sits down with a criminologist to delve deeper into the minds of these criminals. Let's take a break. Stay with us here on CNC3. Welcome back to Unspun. Our country has a problem. People don't feel safe. Too often our citizens, especially women, are violently murdered, with many of these attacks involving sexual violence. Now, in order to understand why this is, we must first understand the minds of the individuals who commit these offenses against the people of our nation. Senior reporter Akash Samaru sat down with criminologist Dr. Neptune Figaro. Let's take a look as they delve into the mind of a murderer.
Well, thank you, Mark. Look, we know the situation we're in, but can we and how do we get out of it? Also, is there something a bit more sinister afoot that we're not detecting? We're here to answer those questions. We have criminologist and lecturer Dr. Melissa Neptune Figaro. Hi, good day.
Hi, good day.
So let's examine crime in general. How did we get here? What was dismantled that we're finding ourselves in this position?
One of the things that I could point to is a change in the subculture where crime itself was becoming, and deviance was becoming a norm in certain cultures and societies within Trinidad and Tobago, where you have people who are deprived economically, resorting to criminal activity in order to survive. And then now you have a culture where it now is becoming glamorized, romanticized. So young people are involved in themselves in crimes beyond that of economic needs. We see the change in parenting. We see discipline levels changing. We see family members coming from single-parent homes. And I think the lack of supervision was one thing that I think raised alarm for the criminal situations, where you have people, children, especially young people, not being monitored. I think the second thing I would think about is the little lapses and gaps in the criminal justice system. We have a whole bunch of flaws and things that we need to attend to. For example, the judicial system, where we have the courts taking very long, lengthy periods to solve cases, where we have a conviction rate of 2% for all the crimes that are in Trinidad and Tobago.
Well, that's a good point, and it brings me to my other question here. Do you think we have serial killers among us, and maybe due to our low detection rate, we're not cognizant of their presence?
In my opinion, because of the gang situation within Trinidad and Tobago and how prolific it's become, there will be serial killers. But I don't have the statistics to prove this. And as a criminologist, we need to figure out if there's any way we could capture that information. Because we have lapses within in terms of trying to get DNA testing. We don't do psychological testing, criminal patterns. So it's very difficult to see whether we have serial killers. So it will be my personal opinion to say that we do, especially with gang violence and crimes of that nature. But we don't have the statistics to prove it. Sadly, we do not, unfortunately.
What do you think are some of the societal factors that contribute to breeding these murderers?
The society itself is becoming one where families need to be more vigilant of what their children are doing. Our criminal justice system as well needs to step up in terms of reforming prison systems, for example, reintegrating prisoners back into society so that they'll become more proactive rather than resort to crime. Because we also have a very high recidivism rate, with 45% of our prisoners actually return to prison. Because when you see people who are killers and they have no empathy for family members or the life, you start to think about the psychosocial issues of psychopaths, and you start to think about mental issues that are plaguing our society. We really need to dive into that, because we are producing people who are not empathetic at all to the crime that they commit. They are not faced by the harm that they cause individuals. And in this instance, I think that we should be able to try and do more in order to do psychological testing and mental health strategies in order to help our population. It is an alarming rate.
So tell me about this lack of empathy. Is it that some people are just born with empathy while others just don't have it, they don't feel it?
One of the first things is that it becomes a norm to them. The fact that killing somebody or murdering somebody or raping somebody, and they're numb to the feelings of that other person. So it's a norm not to feel anything. Sometimes it's biological. You really don't have the capacity. You have people who suffer from schizophrenia, bipolar, so much of mental disorders that it is very hard for them in themselves to understand why they do what they do. It's inherited sometimes genetically, and it's been proven with studies in biosocial criminology, where genetics, you could be in a different environment away from crime, but you still have criminal tendencies because your parents were criminals and you have no contact with them. So like adoption studies. So there are reasons why people would adopt this type of behavior, this lack of empathy, this propensity to commit crime is higher. And I think the last explanation is that we don't have punishment, really, so they get away with it and they think maybe it's acceptable behavior, especially if they are within a social setting where it is accepted behavior.
We saw the effect that Andrea had on the nation, but what other psychological effects are we seeing in society, a society that has to live with this high crime rate?
Society itself is fearful. The fear of crime is actually increasing. You would see more than ever people with monitors on their homes, their cars now, they have monitors. They're pretty much trying to retreat into their own space so that they'll keep safe. But there's also anger that very little is being done, especially with the criminal justice system. although we are not to blame them wholly, there is anger in the society of how prolific the crime has become. It's increasing. But crime is dynamic. The depression people face, there's a sad society because we're losing people we love. How many missing people, people that were murdered.
Let's try to end with some optimism here. There must be a way out of this. How far are we away? Are we anywhere near getting out of this? Anytime soon? We
are far gone, but we're not hopeless. We still have love in our country. We still have a patriotism. We see that togetherness, especially for Carnival. There are a lot of people who want to actually not have a country filled with crime, so it's not crime-ridden. So there's hope. So where there's light, there's hope. And I think what we need to do is take gradual steps, try to help the institutions along, so like the churches, the families, all the economic situations in our country, joblessness, lack of opportunities for young people to be in pro-social activities, good recreational activities. We need to start from ground zero up in terms of gradually kind of fleshing our young people and people within society to know that crime is wrong, and actually teaching them and disciplining them and knowing that what is right from what is wrong and what is not accepted in society versus what is accepted.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. Neptune Figaro. You gave us a lot to think about there. Mark, it's back to you.
Thank you, Akash, for that insight. We take a break, and when we come back, we switch things up on Unspun. Welcome back to Unspun. Now we'll be reaching across the Caribbean to St. Lucia, where an old friend of mine, Dale Elliott, has been doing some important work. Dale is the mind behind the enlightening TV show Untold Stories, and we've selected one of his most interesting pieces to feature tonight. Let's take a look at Dale's piece entitled The Usual Suspect.
By no stretch of the imagination am I a police investigator. I have never studied law. Neither can I be described as a criminal profiler. But when a case file for capital murder lands in my lap, I read it from cover to cover. What my lay brain finds is a pattern of criminal behavior, multiple daring escapes from prison, which eventually leads to the death of a police officer in the line of duty. But as I begin to read between the lines and sit to interview the parties involved, a disturbing picture begins to appear. Fingerprints, blood splatter, ballistic reports, bullet trajectory, mismatched statements, and a very, very convenient case file gives me sleepless nights. The more I research it, the more I am impeded. Everything that was written in this file was meant to prove guilt beyond a reasonable doubt. But did it? 12 jurors said yes. We say, you be the judge. Tell me your full name.
Mitchell Joseph.
What's your AKAs?
Beach.
What else?
Starboy.
Starboy. Creature, let's call you guys.
Mitchell Joseph has been an inmate at the Borderley Correctional Facility since May 2008. He was wanted on a burglary charge, but on the day the police executed a search warrant on his mother's home, everything went horribly wrong. 3 police officers went into the alley to arrest Mitchell. 1 would be killed, and 3 very conflicting stories would emerge. We have obtained and recreated the exact statements from the police officers at the exact location where the incident occurred. And we also present the convict's version of the events.
And this fella grabbed me from behind on my right side. So, and grabbed me up big and tried to tell me and say, "Bitch, do run."
Which police? Do run. Do run.
When Constable Remy entered the yard, I lost sight of him and the suspect. When I entered the yard, I found Constable Remy and the suspect in a scuffle. Remy was trying to apprehend him and he was trying to escape. At the time, Constable Remy was up against some concrete blocks and the suspect was in front of him with his back to me. I immediately went to assist and I grabbed the suspect from behind. I held onto his left arm at the wrist with my left hand and placed my right hand around his midsection and I pulled him off Constable Remy. At that point, I heard Remy say, "Weapon!" and I heard about 5 gunshots.
Weapon! Weapon!
I first thought it was Remy doing the shooting, so without releasing my hold on the suspect, I pulled my legs away from his, and in so doing, I was leaning over his back. It was then I saw the firearm in his hand. I saw when he fired the last round. Mitchell then brought his firearm over his left shoulder and was bringing it up to line up with me in an attempt to shoot me. A struggle ensued between us. I managed to trip the suspect and he fell backwards with me on top of him and I was able to disarm him. Then I asked him,
No, you just shoot a police guy, sir? What should I shoot a police guy, sir? Shoot the man, guy. Why you shoot the man, guy? That's what I should do.
Yeah, well, kill me. But I did already. I did already, so kill me. With me, boy. Yeah, well, kill me. I did already. I did already, so kill me.
Shoot, kill me. That's what I should do. Shoot him, man. Why you shoot him, man?
He's a puller. Huh? Shoot me, the puller.
I'm shooting you, man.
Shoot me, the
You're
puller.
supposed to die for that. Yeah.
Shoot me, the puller.
You're supposed to die.
And this fella grabbed me from behind on my right side. So, and grabbed me up big and tried to tell me and say, "Bitch, do run." So when I look, I see a gun in my face. So I still push and I run. So in running, when I swing now, I bounce up on somebody. The person grab me. And the person grab me now. I try to wrestle, like to move. The other person had to grab me from behind, reach on us. So he had his gun in his hand. And the one that told me I have a gun in his hand, when he pointed on me, I grabbed it and went off my hand there. Passed there, went off and hit his partner. Like in grabbing, like he had his gun, he have me, but like when the thing is getting so close, I grab and it just went off. His partner. But I don't, up to now I don't see the face. They were on Remy. But it's after I get to know Remy and whatnot. It's when I see like he get hit there. So he's hitting on the blocks. They have some blocks for my mother fence. He rests on the blocks. Then I hear more shots firing. You check? So they have me. Labidi have me. Then Philip came in. And then repeat again. Page we just come and question and search. You check? So then now he ended up taking out the cartridge, put the shots in his hand. Labidi still have me there. Then I noticed my leg swelling and that my left leg was behind my neck.
While at the back of the house, I heard a commotion and then 5 shots. 4 of the shots were in quick succession, and then the other came after. Immediately, I ran to the front of the house and entered through the gate where Michel and Remy entered, with a 9mm Glock service pistol in my hand. As I turned to my left, I saw Labadi struggling with Michel, who was holding a Glock pistol in his right hand. that pistol was pointed in my direction. I immediately moved to my right and grabbed hold of Michel's left hand since Labadie was holding his right. Corporal Labadie then threw Michel to the ground and removed the pistol from Michel's right hand. The pistol was then handed to me by Labadie shouting,
"Come and shoot my Bassant! Come and shoot Remy!"
At this time, I took possession of the pistol and jumped over Labadie, who was holding on to Michel on the floor. I went over to Remy and asked him if he was okay.
Police Detective Number 5 Lester Remy would succumb to his injuries. This was one of the very few cases where a St. Lucian police officer was killed in the line of duty. Mitchell Joseph's trial was swift.
Beyond reasonable doubt is the standard that must be met by the prosecution's evidence in a criminal trial. That no other logical explanation can be derived from the facts except that the defendant committed the crime, thereby overcoming the presumption that that person is innocent. Therefore, the phrase "beyond reasonable doubt," as simple as it may sound, carries a heavy meaning. It means that one must be sure, certain, convinced beyond doubt before one can pronounce guilt on another. But in Mitchell Joseph's case, was there such doubt? Well, for starters, the biggest inconsistency is the tallying up of or count given for the bullets alleged to have been in Mitchell Joseph's firearm, even if Mitchell himself never admitted having firearm. But assuming that he had the firearm that the prosecution says, it would have had the capacity for 10 rounds of ammunition. It was allegedly seized from Mitchell with 6 rounds. Therefore, it could only have discharged 4 bullets. Yet, Officer Remy's body showed 5 bullet entry points. The firearm itself was registered to a Dr. Winston Paris, who was out of St. Lucia at the material time. Dr. Paris had not reported his firearm stolen or missing. Contrarily, Dr. Paris would have been required under St. Lucia's firearms laws to leave the firearm with the police when he left the country. Is it possible, therefore, beyond reasonable doubt, for Dr. Paris's gun to have been stolen by Mitchell Joseph and used, yet never reported stolen? Or is it more possible that the police had this extra firearm to be used in the event anything went wrong? For example, friendly fire. Mitchell Joseph received a gunshot to his leg. Nowhere did any police officer admit to having shot him. Why not? Not one of the policemen on the scene who admitted to having firearms at the material time submitted his firearm for any testing to be done as to how many rounds were recorded before and after the raid, or as to whether any of the spent shells found on the scene came from any of these firearms. It is important to note that there were spent shells found on the ground after the shooting. These spent shells could not be positively identified as having come from any particular gun. At no time was Mitchell Joseph's hand tested for gunpowder residue. That would have been one conclusive way of knowing, beyond reasonable doubt, that he fired a gun at the material time. Despite these inconsistencies, when the jury walked back in, you could hear a pin drop.
Mitchell Joseph was sentenced to death for the murder of Officer Lester Remy. His sentence would later be commuted to life imprisonment. Despite the court's decision, Mitchell Joseph clings to his story that one of the police officers shot his partner in friendly fire in the alley that day.
To the people you say who framed you, is there anything that you'd like to let them know?
God knows the truth, and we cannot run away from the truth. I don't like to tell them, Jack. You all know the truth. In our future episodes, we'll explore more of Dale Elliott's work here on Unspun. Let's take our final break and come back with an interesting segment featuring citizen journalists. Welcome back to Unspun. A network of 25 civil society organizations is now equipped with digital technology packages valued at a combined total of 420,000 TT dollars as part of the European Union funded training programs CSO for good environmental governance. The CSO representatives have been using the new equipment to contribute to the Caribbean region's first ever environmental news network powered by citizen journalists under the banner Caribbean Environmental News Network. Let's take a look at a few of the encouraging pieces covered by these citizen journalists who take time out of their busy work schedules to bring awareness to the communities they love.
In October 2020, Education Minister Dr. Nyan Gatsby-Dolly indicated that 90% of Trinidad and Tobago's schooling population were engaged in online learning. Less than 4 months later, the Ministry of Education announced a phased reopening of schools. This announcement came as no surprise to many citizens, given the difficulty much of the population has had in managing the need for digital transformation. The Caribbean News Network ventured to rural communities to gain insight from citizens on the ground. At the Dow Village Council Christmas Toy Drive, we interviewed primary school pupil and resident of Saparia, Soraya, who visited the community at the time of the event.
Hi, my name is Karen Bascom and I am here with
Soraya.
Hi Soraya, and you are, right now you can say where you're from. Where are you from?
Saparia Oro.
Saparia Oro. Alright. So do you have a computer or a tablet?
A computer.
Alright. When you're using your computer for school, is it easy to use?
Yes.
Like, do you know how to use Zoom and do you know how to use apps?
Yes.
Alright. How long you had your computer now for?
I don't know.
You don't know? 1 year, 2 years, 3 years?
Tell them since the COVID. Since the COVID.
Ah, but so how you get to know how to use the computer?
My mommy teach me.
Ah, alright, nice. Alright, well thank you very much for the interview. So you can wave bye now.
Bye.
Alright.
On the front lines of this challenge are teachers who had to take on new rules they simply were not prepared for. Ms. Jonelle Cox, teacher at Chagonas Primary School, says that preparation for online learning is immensely time-consuming and beyond the scope of most teachers.
Online teaching is difficult. Yes, it is. You are like a technician, IT technician for yourself, for the students, the parents, and multitasking during the lesson to ensure that everything moves smoothly is extremely difficult. And don't talk about preparing content for online. Oh my God, sometimes it's hours. And then you want to ensure that your slides, your videos, editing your videos as well is appropriate for the children. And it's difficult, especially as a primary school teacher, because you have to ensure that the children are engaged.
With so many challenges, businesses, corporations, communities, and NGOs within our society sought to ensure access to digital devices. It is clear, however, that not only is access an issue, but also the ability to use said tools to ensure efficient learning. Ms. Teresa Wankin, Secretary General of the Canto Association, gives us insight.
My name is Teresa Wankin and I'm the Secretary General of Canto. I grew up in the rural village of Granville, CNC3's. Development in rural communities can only be done if there is collaboration with all stakeholders in a cohesive way, governments, private sector, and even the citizens themselves working together to solve the problem in a sustainable way.
With the situation being referred to as an education crisis, NGOs and community groups have and intend to continue taking action. The Elevate organization is one such entity that seeks to provide books and digital tools as well as access to 100 students per year. Formed in the community of CNC3's in 2021, they aim to increase operations to eventually cover all rural and underserved communities in Trinidad and Tobago. As students in Forms 4, 5, and 6 return to school under the new COVID norm, parents, guardians, and other citizens remain concerned about the future of our next generation given the disruption in their education. Equity in education is now a major social issue.
Thanks so much for joining us on this first edition of Unspun. We hope to see you in 2 Sundays from now when we're hoping to bring you a fresh batch of stories that matter to you. If you have any story tips for Unspun, please ensure you drop us an email or call us at 800 CNC3. Until then, have a good one, and remember, be the change you want to see in the world.
You're watching CNC3.